Welcome back to the channel. It's going to be a good day today. I'm going to cruise up this road. This road was chaos. I've actually done a video on it before, and you got to go really fast and try really aggressively just to survive out there on a motorcycle. But it became such an issue, thankfully, that the police officers have decided to patrol it heavily. It was all over the news that they are cracking down, and they had a massive police force. So I'm hoping to get a relaxing ride in. Gotta have the dash cam on. I use that sometimes for little videos for you guys, but it's mainly just my dash cam. I just like having a 360 view of things going on around me in case worse comes to worse. But yeah, the last time I tried to get out on this road and relax, it was just full on adrenaline rush. And then what happens is, by the time you get to the real mountains, your adrenaline is so jacked, you're scraping pegs and carving the canyon, which historically is my favorite kind of riding. But when you're leaving the house specifically for a peaceful cruise, and that happens, there's always a little bit of disappointment in there, but you embrace it. Oh, what a day. Yes, it's hot. It is. I can't believe that there's a place in America this fucking hot. But so blessed. I remember gray was a big part of my life growing up, and I grew up on the East Coast in the South, and sometimes in the wintertime, even in the summer when those nor'easters come in, it'll the sky will be covered in gray clouds for like 6 weeks straight. The sun like finally shows itself after 2 months, and you feel like you're in heaven. You know, when that happens, there's psychological effects, depression and being tired, lack of energy. You really got to be on your supplements to survive in that kind of weather. You got to take your vitamin B with your folic acids and all your stuff that vitamin D that you miss out on when it's that thick layer of clouds for so long. But then you come out here, and I've been in this region for 18 months, and the sun has just blasted me all 18 months. It's just no breaks. It's crazy. Look at this road. Man, it is special out here. I don't know about all the police presence. I'm going 5 over, cruise control, just chilling, and I'm being passed a lot. So that news article may have been all hype. However, I'm not being passed super aggressively. Like I said, last time I was on this road, I filmed a video and the camera was aiming at me, and so you probably couldn't see, but we were whipping and we weren't passing many people. So this is nice. It's going to be a beautiful ride. I've got some things on my mind. An old friend of mine reached out, and I think mental health is such an overwhelming problem in America right now, from bad breeding chemicals in our food, chemicals in the sky. I mean, it's no longer a conspiracy theory that there's chemtrails up there. It's been tested and proven, and pilots have come forward. And there's just so much going on. I personally have a daily detox ritual that I do to help my body push out all these chemicals. That and eating healthy. And you know, I'm not sponsored by them, but Zeolite makes this amazing sort of clay compound that you drink, and it's a binding agent. It kind of grabs up all the shit that your body doesn't need. But I think that when you compound all this stuff, overcrowded cities, just mental illness is just running rampant. Just in my lifetime, we've had, you know, like 4 different traumatic economy crashing events. We've had terrorist attacks. I mean, it's been wild. Like, I understand the Great Depression was tough, but you know, a couple years standing in line for free bread, as bad as that sounds, I mean, try 30 years of no solid economy. There's a generation below mine where I was at a really expensive gym and just things that were just unrealistic for a minimum wage employee. And I was talking to this girl about it, and I was like, you know, it's crazy that, because she was complaining about how she's not making any money, and I was like, it's wild that you're at like the most expensive gym in town. And she was saying, like, her generation of people have actually given up on the idea of even owning a home and even saving money, because the economy is just, their whole lives has been a shit, and that they just want to live in the moment now. That's why van lifing has taken off. That's why you see these overcrowded, expensive gyms. Just completely different from the mindset of my people. And obviously there's outliers in every group, and I don't want to put everybody in a box and say that they've given up, but it makes sense. So the reason I'm saying all this is because an old friend of mine reached out to me. This is a friend of mine from high school, when I was homeless and selling drugs and gang banging and set tripping and all that fun stuff. And he reaches out about a year ago or 2 years ago. I was gonna start a podcast, and I filmed a couple episodes. I did like 12 episodes for this podcast. I wanted to have 24 episodes done before I launched it. So I was just filming, doing some really great interviews. I had a whole studio set up I had a second dining room in my house that I never used. I made it this gorgeous studio, and so I started doing that, and I reached out to him 2 years ago. I was like, hey, let's get on my podcast together and talk about growing up on the streets and homelessness and gangbanging and all the shit that we did to survive. And we went 2 different directions. And this is one of my best friends, you know, so we talked blunt with each other, and it was like we both came from the same streets. It was even worse for me because I was homeless with my parents in prison. He actually had his mom and stepdad and had a bedroom in a house and didn't have to worry about bills and rent. But the neighborhood itself is so toxic. You know, the projects will suck you in whether you have it good or bad, and nobody in the projects has it good. So yeah, he might have been living at his mom's house, but it wasn't necessarily like he was just living the dream with 3 meals a day and being spoiled. It wasn't, you know, everybody struggles. But he ended up homeless. I ended up a 2-time loser, felon, jail stints, facing prison time, all this shit. But also I ended up a multimillionaire, and I've built and sold several businesses in the process. and we wanted to discuss how the decisions I made in life brought me to where I'm at, and the decisions that he made in life brought him to where he's at. And these indictments and these crimes that I got in trouble for, and I won't say allegedly, they're facts, is, I think, the same mindset that got me into this level of success and broke me through all the different levels that I broke through. Because you have to take risks. You have to find this gray area. In hindsight, I'll say, I don't really ever want to go back to the gray area again. But if you are in that gray area, leaning more towards the legal side of the gray area is the ideal position to be in. It's like, and it's funny because everybody I know, to some degree, is a criminal. I mean, it's funny because you got Pelosi over here making hundreds of millions of dollars on insider trading, but then people are getting in trouble because they're claiming a dependent on their taxes that they might not have. And I mean, we learned that back in the day. I remember, 2005, I would get a monthly bonus from my company. I owned the company, but I'd write myself a monthly bonus, but I would W-2 myself. And so I would have my couple $1,000s a week coming in on W-2, and I would pay my normal taxes, but I would go to HR the third paycheck of the month, and I'd have my HR pull my W-9s and write 17 on there, and then I'd write myself a bonus check, and I'd get the majority of it, and then the next week I'd have her go back down to the 3 or whatever that I was normally supposed to file. That way, when I got my large check, they wouldn't take half of it right away. It would give me a chance to get the money, invest it, collect interest on it, do some things, and at the end of the year, when I filed my taxes, obviously I did them legitimately, and they would be like, oh, well, you owe us a ton of money because you claimed 17. And then I would give them the money I owed them. But at least for the 12 months of the year, I was able to use that money to my benefit, and by the time I paid them the taxes on it, the majority of that money I had in tax-free income accounts, assets that are gaining appreciation and I'm not paying taxes on until I pull it out and stuff like that. Anyway, I don't want to bore you guys with financial conversations. I want to talk about the streets. So he reaches out to me out of nowhere. We haven't talked in a year. And he says, hey, bro, if you want to interview me for your podcast, we should get that done sooner than later. I'm going to disappear soon, and I want to make sure other people don't turn out like me. My heart sinks when I read that, because whoa, I disappear all the time. I'll take 2 years, disappear, 2 years later pop back up with a successful business and a new car. And that's sort of the stoic way. You're supposed to take some time to build yourself. But for some reason, when he says it, I'm wonder if he's dancing around with, personal harm. He's 45 years old or something, homeless, sleeping in his car. History of drug addiction. His teeth fell out from crystal meth. And because he was a homeless bum, the state bought him all new teeth, which is just so funny because I shattered my jaw in college in a fight, and because of that shattered jaw, I got periodontal disease where my gum line started to recede. After about 15 years, 20 years later, I guess it was 17 years later, my gum line started to recede, and your roots are yellow. And so I had a really clean mouth. I was flossing several times a day after every meal, and I have good oral health. I had a whole dental kit inside my desk at my office where I would make sure I was clean up, because when you're running sales and in meetings all the time and talking to people, you don't want to have bad on me, so I went to the dentist to get some veneers, and ended up being a 2.5-year process that cost me $50,000 to have these teeth. And he has the exact same mouth as me, and he got his for free because he's a meth head. And so I found that to be, I'm not offended by that because I love this guy, but it's just funny how if you're trying to do something with your life, life is so expensive, and if you give up on life, life is free. Very weird. So I'm going to interview him. I'm not going to do the podcast right now. I don't really want my face online. I just want some privacy. I'm sort of in my disappearing era, and maybe in 2 years I'll pop back up and I'll start that podcast, and I'll already have all these interviews, and I'll just be able to launch them and move forward. You know, they're all saved on my hard drive. And I think it's a good idea to keep filming them. It keeps me in touch with friends and keeps me having really powerful conversations with highly successful people. So it was pretty cool. But I want to talk to him and have these conversations, and I want to feel out what he means by disappear. Is he feeling ambitious? But, you know. And so, yeah, we start off homeless on the streets. He's not homeless, but he's got no curfew, and so we're kicking it. And at that age, you know, when you're adolescents, you lean on your homeboys, and you have this the family that you create type of thing. Like, there's your family that you're given, and then the family that you get. And it was like, you know, he was the family that I chose. This is back in the 90s. I think the I Am album from Nas came out, and Favor for a Favor came out, and it really summed up our relationship. I remember that was like our theme song back then, Favor for a Favor, because if anybody ever crossed me, he would go handle that for me, and vice versa. We always had each other's backs. But he always had a bad attitude. He was always like, fuck the world, fuck this, fuck that. And I did too at the time, but I started to slowly evolve out of it. I always had a calling for a higher purpose. And I always believed that there was something better for me. And I always daydreamed about abundance and luxuries. And I daydreamed about driving around in a Lamborghini and living in a mansion. And I made all that come true through hard work and determination. You know, just getting through college, I've said before, was one of the most grit, heavy, insane times of my life. I mean, you are juggling, and it's so laughable when you're talking about it. It's like, oh yeah, college was so hard, and some of the best times of people's lives, and it was a great time. But I was going through an existential crisis. I was depressed. I didn't know how to manage my emotions. My body had all these chemicals in it, natural and artificial. You know, the testosterone and the lack of dopamine and the drugs and the weed, and just everything was just, I was just lost. But no matter how lost I was and how I felt, I always got up and went to class. Always made sure my homework was getting done. Sometimes I'd be so preoccupied it'd be hard to focus, and I'd have to put on some classical music and pet my dogs and clear my head for a little while, but then I'd get back to it. Sometimes I'd be up till 4 in the morning because my brain wouldn't stop, and it would finally slow down when I was tired, and then I could study and do my homework when I was tired. And I remember I wanted him to have a better life, and so I hit him up and I'm like, hey, I got this 2-bedroom apartment in college, and I'm never there because I'm always in class and I'm always running around trying to sell a sack of weed to pay my rent. Rent was $500, and it would take me an entire month of selling weed to get that money. And most of the time the weed was being fronted to me, and so I'd have to like sell an ounce to pay back purchasing the ounce, and then buy an ounce and then sell that ounce just to pay my rent. then circle back and beg him for another, try to get 2 for $5 fronted to me. If I get 2 ounces for $500 fronted to me, I could sell those and pay him back and buy another ounce and pay rent. And it was just this juggle where I'd always have rent just on time or a little bit late. And so it wasn't like I was living the good life, but I was like, hey, come check out what I'm doing. This town I'm in is focused. All the kids are studying and trying to be good, and you're in the hood. Come out and see what this is like. And so he came out and he just brought total chaos to my life. He was just complete alcoholic, drunk every night. I'm getting drunk. He shows up and he gets food stamps and government aid. So he's got like $1,200 a month and free food. And so I go to try to get food stamps, and they're like, no, you're in college. College is a luxury. We don't give food stamps and government aid to college kids. I was like, well, I'm the guy that's trying to make my life better. And you're not giving me any assistance, but you're going to give this guy who doesn't give a shit all the assistance in the world, and all he's doing is using you for your money. And they're like, yeah, well, that's the way it works. I never understood that. But I'm glad he got help because he needed it. So I want to talk about all that with him on the podcast. I want to discuss, him getting all this help, which was enabling him to never do anything for himself. And then me, because I was doing something for myself, not getting any help, which enabled me to keep pushing, keep thriving, keep digging. I was in a state of panic forever. 20 years of just panic mode. So I'm curious, then his negative energy, he's got childhood trauma. I'm pretty sure his dad was molesting him. His stepdad was molesting him his whole childhood. His stepdad and him got into an argument. This is part of the reason why I brought him out to my college town to get away from everything for a while. Is him and his stepdad got into an argument, and Paul had a gun in his hand. And his stepdad runs out of the house and into the shed, and Paul chases him into the shed to have this conversation, to continue the conversation. And his stepdad ends up dead with a gunshot to the head, which was claimed and deemed by law enforcement as a suicide. So, I know my boy's got a temper, and I know he's a bad motherfucker, which is why he was my homie. When you're running the streets, you can't roll with punks. You gotta roll with bad motherfuckers, or else you're just gonna get eaten alive out there. Like my dad, he did a very long stint in prison, maximum security. He's witnessed people get murdered. He had a dead body in front of his cell for 9 hours. His whole cell filled up with blood. He had to sit Indian style in his cot for 9 hours because his entire cell was full of blood. And he said the smell, he'll never forget the smell. And, I asked him sort of about the whole energy in there. He was just like, look, man, I'm going to just tell you right now, when you're in maximum security prison, you either have a bitch or you are a bitch, and that's just the way it is. I was like, damn, that's real. And so it's kind of like that on the streets too, only it's not about having a bitch or being a bitch. It's just you're either heartless and selfish, or you get eaten alive. And that's how you survive out there. So he's the kind of guy that I can see doing that. So that was a long time ago, and hopefully he didn't, but you just never know. Anyway, I'm totally losing myself here because instead of having a structured conversation, I'm just talking about what's on my mind. And so, where do two people start off with the same origin story go in such different paths where you fast forward, and I feel like I'm living the dream. Like everything I've ever manifested for myself, I'm living. And even when I go through hard times, I don't even see the hard times or feel it, because I'm so well versed in going inside my mind and finding gratitude for all the moments and finding the blessings the warrior's way, and just seeing that this too will pass. And when it does pass, what's on the other side is something I can't even imagine for myself. Whereas for him, doesn't believe in himself. He doesn't have these daydreams. He thinks he's cursed. He thinks he lives under a black cloud. And so the reason I want to have this conversation is because I want to compare this conversation that we're having to the podcast interview. And maybe what I'll do when I do interview him is I'll film a video of me on my bike without any words, and I'll do a audio over where you can listen to that podcast while watching me ride. I'm not going to actually show the podcast. I don't want anybody to know who these people are. I made up a fake name for him just now, and I'm probably going to ask him to use that fake name in the interview. Paul just seems like a real generic white guy's name, so that's who he's going to be. But yeah, I'm curious what he thinks brought him to where he is and what he saw in me. It's going to be a candid conversation. I'm excited to share it. So anyway, I'm sorry to ramble you guys so much. I mean, Lord, I feel like I just didn't say anything. But maybe I'll re-listen to this and I'll be like, oh no, I did say a lot. So hope you enjoyed that. More conversations to come. I've got a book of topics to discuss. Today, I wanted to get out and clear my head. I didn't want to open up my book of topics. And so this conversation probably flows a little differently than you're used to, but my videos only get about a 70% watch. So by the time I get to this point in the video, no one's listening anyway. Much love to those that do, and if you are still here, love and gratitude to you. Get out there and do good things. Be good and help people when you can.